please welcome the incredible Amy Porterfield.
Hello there, my friend. I'm so happy to be here with you.
I'm so excited. I want to tell you this, and I think I told you this in passing really quickly than when I first met you. The reason why I'm podcasting is because of something you said years ago.
What?
Yep. Yeah, you were one of the biggest inspirations and influence to me starting a show.
Wow, I love that. What did I say that sparked it?
Well, these weren't the exact words, but this was my recollection of this, which isn't true, by the way. It's not true, but you said pretty much, blogging is dead, everyone's podcasting. And I know you didn't say that, but that's my memory of it.
Kind of what I insinuated. I do believe that podcasting has a much more powerful reach than blogging does. Now, there's a place for blogging, but I kind of do think podcasting is better.
Oh, yeah. Well, and then the next level up is like, really, you're having a YouTube show that happens to be a podcast, that happens to be a blog post. So there's like,
that's a great point. It's all three in one.
Yeah. But the quick story and how I discovered you was my friend Diana House said, you have to listen to this podcast. It's with Amy Porterfield. And I haven't heard about you in that moment. And so we were spending winters in San Diego, and this one instance, because we used to go there every winter, just so happens that we'd probably drive past your house in Carlsbad every single time. So we rented a place, and last minute, like the day before we were arriving, there was a plumbing issue. And so they had to cancel our reservation, but they found another equal place for us to rent. But it happened to be much further up the coast. And at this point, we had already scheduled the boys to go into certain daycares. But guess what? It ended up being in the morning, a 3-hour round trip.
Oh my goodness. That is dedication.
Oh, so yeah, I would usually find a coffee shop, work, and then pick them up early. Anyway, so when Diana introduced me to Amy Porterfield, I listened to every single episode, and you made me survive those drives on the California highway.
Love this so much. I think that's so cool. Like, I always wonder, like, how did I stumble upon this? But it usually is when I have a really long drive. So that worked out perfectly.
It did. It was great. And I love your story. I love everything that you've created in this world. I'm actually a DCA graduate.
So cool. I'd love to hear that.
Did in like 2019, maybe. I don't even remember. But man, you got your crap together. And I really want to talk to you about this because I use you as an example in a lot of episodes about people that have focus. So there's you, there's Marie Forleo. You think about women in this space, and I like to use women that start out, and when you started out, you were doing other things, but your focus in teaching people how to launch courses, Marie Forleo and B School, it's the same thing year after year, and you just make it better and better. How do you keep that focus?
One, I love that you mentioned Marie because she was a mentor of mine early on, and I saw that singular focus and it inspired me. So it's like, yes, I get that. And I got that from her. And how do I keep that focus? Well, one, I learned early on, so I've been doing this for about 15 years, that when you are known for something online, everything is easier. Your name comes up in the right conversations. Doors open for you. You get asked to the stages. You get asked to the podcast because people know what you're going to deliver and how you're going to add value. And so I saw that early on and I thought, I want to be known for something. Also, I got into entrepreneurship because personally, I wanted freedom. I didn't have big goals to change lives in the beginning. My goal in the very beginning was I wanted more freedom. I wanted to work when I wanted, where I wanted, how I wanted. And so in order to get that freedom, I knew that I needed to stay in my lane and get really good at something so that I could have that success. I saw people chase the shiny things, do this, do that. And I couldn't figure out where they added value. And I didn't want to be like that. And so I was clear about wanting that freedom, wanting those opportunities. And I saw a great example of how it worked. And I just went with it. Also, this is a little secret. I wouldn't say I'm the most creative person. I'm not the kind that I'm in the shower and have 20 ideas that I drive my team crazy because I'm like, let's do this, let's do that. Sometimes I wish I had a little bit more of that, but I don't. I'm more like a dog with a bone. I find something I'm good at, and then I get better and better and better. And that's essentially what happened with helping people create digital courses online.
Yeah. Okay. Do you ever get bored?
Great question. Such a great question. Sometimes I do. So let's talk about that. When you do the same thing over and over again, I answer the same questions. I talk about the same things. I've told the same stories a million times. And yes, sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, I cannot answer that question one more time. So how do I move past that? Well, I have a lot of variety outside of my business. Not everything I'm interested in needs to be monetized. So if I have a passion or an interest outside, whether it be travel or doing things with my husband, Hobie, or getting into a new hobby, I really take advantage of that outside of my work. So I have variety. A lot of entrepreneurs want variety, but you don't have to have it just in your business. And also, I am really clear on why I do this. So 15 years ago, I did this to have more freedom in my own life. Now, fast forward to today, and I could honestly say I wake up in the morning for the woman who's in a cubicle, who is not getting paid what she's worth, who doesn't have a voice in her company, is often overlooked, and she looks around and thinks, there has to be something more for me. There has to be something greater than this. I want to be that mirror for her to say, you are so worthy of bigger things and you are capable of it. So getting up in the morning for her, I'll answer the same question 10 more times because it's worth it to me.
Totally. I used to have a random picture of a woman holding a baby whom I didn't know framed on my desk because she was the epitome of my ideal customer. And my friends would come into my office. They're like, who is that? I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, what? That's very weird, Renee. But the same thing. I would sit at my desk and I would look at her and I would say to myself, oh, she needs me today.
Yes.
And that was the motivation to be repetitive, to be bored, to do the mundane things.
Yep.
But you get so good at it. So I can only imagine what DCA looks like today versus 2019 felt like 2 years ago. But how long ago was that? 5 years?
It feels like 1,000 years ago. But you're right. So my first iteration of my course, Digital Course Academy, was good. But the iteration that is today is leaps and bounds better because I have honed my craft. Mm-hmm. And I think there's something like people ask me, why are you so confident? And I think, oh my gosh, if you saw me 10 years ago, you wouldn't have said I was super confident. It has come with a track record. I always say courage is that leap of faith. You need courage to get started, to take the big risks because you have no proof if it's going to work or not. Confidence is, I have a proven track record. Little by little, I've gotten better and better. And so because of that, I wake up in the morning, I feel very confident about the work I do, but that's because I've done the reps. I've taken the time. Yeah. But also I want to go back to something you said that sparked me about doing the mundane work, doing the repetitive stuff and how it can get really boring. And Layla Hermosi is a woman I follow online, and she said something on social that was such that is what I've done all along and didn't know I was doing it. She said, you need to learn to love what it takes to get what you want. You need to learn to love what it takes to get what you want. And I learned early on, one thing that it takes is to be repetitive, to answer the same questions, to say the same thing over and over again. But all along getting better and better at your craft. So instead of hating that lack of variety, I learned to love it because I knew what it meant was I'm changing lives. I'm helping women. I'm building wealth in my life and creating a lifestyle I absolutely love. And I get more freedom. So I learned to love what it takes, the good, bad, and ugly in order to get what I want. The only way that works though, is to get clear about what you want. Sometimes people are going after something and I'll be like, okay, ultimately, what do you want? They can't answer that question easily. So spend a little time journaling. What do you ultimately want in your business, but more importantly, in your life? Create a business that will meet you where you want to be.
Ooh, have you done or read The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron?
No. Is that a book I need to read?
Oh, but it's so good. It was one of the things that was a game changer for me. It is, part of it is where she encouraged you to write conscious stream of thought. So 3 pages a day, every morning. You just write. And when you first start, terrible practice, you're like, I love warm coffee. I want to go walk outside. And you're like, this is boring and so stupid. But eventually, crap comes up. And she encourages you not to go back and read your pages. But I'm a little bit of a rule breaker. I needed to find patterns in my thoughts because I needed to fix something. And let me tell you, it was part of the journey, which I call my radical reinvention in the last couple of years, that got me to where I am today, feeling more confident, loving what I do, growing my podcast. I made it to the top 1%. Finally.
That's
right?
a very big deal, my friend.
I know.
I love it.
All around the theme of consistency, showing up, putting in the reps. You know this all too well. Recording episodes sometimes are like, ugh, what am I going to talk about today? Like I was listening to one you just posted about running a webinar and why it's important to have webinars, which you probably talked about 20 or 50 times already on your show. Right?
Exactly. Yes.
But here's the thing is, I already know this information. I need to be reminded. And you reminded me. And so you remember, okay, this content needs to go out for the person who needs to be reminded, and then the person needs to be educated. So anyway, putting in the reps. And I think about this like building a muscle. It's not just going to happen after doing one squat. I get a nice butt from doing one back squat, or else we'd all have nice butts, right?
Amen. Yes.
So let's talk about this thing called freedom.
Yeah.
So you were talking about this actually a lot on your show, and I love this. What does that mean to you?
When I think about freedom, it means choices and the choice to do what I want, when I want, where I want, and how I want it. And I know that could feel very privileged for those that are not experiencing that and feel like they have a million obstacles in front of them to get that. But I also didn't have it when I was a corporate girl. I thought I'd be a corporate girl for life. And when I was 30, I looked around and thought, I have never been my own boss. I've never set my own schedule or called the shots ever. I had a really strict father. And so he was the boss until I left for college. And then, of course, I got into the corporate world, and I always had bosses, usually male bosses. And so I was introduced when I worked for Tony Robbins before I left my last corporate job. And I was introduced to this concept of building a business where you get to call the shots. You get to be as creative as you want. You get to work when you want, where you want, how you want. And I thought, I don't even know how to create a business, nor never in my life did I use the word entrepreneur to refer to something I wanted. That was never even part of my dream. But when I heard the word freedom and I saw it in other online entrepreneurs, that's when I thought, I need a piece of that. And for those listening, I want you to hear this. 15 years ago, I had no idea what kind of business I'd create, how I'd create freedom. I didn't know enough about online marketing to just build a business quickly. I really struggled my first few years, but I kept coming back to my why. And as I mentioned in the early years, it was just to have that freedom. And so it's changed my life to get really clear about why that's so important to me.
And now look at you.
Yeah.
You're a rock star.
I have a pretty amazing life in business. We work a 4-day work week. So I'm going to share a few little glimpses of what freedom looks like now in my life. So my whole team, we have 22 full-time people. We work a 4-day work week. So Monday through Thursday, we take Friday off. The reason we did that is I wanted more freedom, but I work with a lot of women, a lot of mothers, and I wanted them to feel it. They might not be the owner of the company, but I wanted them to feel that entrepreneurial spirit of freedom. So that's why I did it for the whole team. We read this book shorter to learn how to implement it. But even if you're a one-woman show and you're listening right now, you could do a 4-day work week. I promise you. You just kind of change how you navigate through the 4 days to make it work. And it's doable. That's one thing. And then also, I have freedom in the sense that I get to choose what I work on. And I tend to choose just a few things at once, because when you have 10, 20 projects going on, there's nothing free about that. You are beholden to all of those obligations. So at any given time, I only have a few key projects I'm working on or maintaining. Like in my business, we had a $20 million year last year. We have 2 digital courses. It was amazing. Woo! It was my biggest.
Was that your biggest year yet?
Yes. Thank you, my friend. Thank you. I love that women celebrate women so beautifully.
Yeah.
But we have, to get to that 20 million, 2 digital courses, 1 membership, and a few partnership kind of promos that I did. That is all. And so I have very few offers, but I've learned over the years to do them really well. To me, that looks like freedom. So it might not to you, but you have to really figure out what does freedom look like for you and then build a business and a life around that.
Oh man. Okay. Let's just celebrate you for a second.
Oh, thank you.
I remember listening to an episode. I don't remember when this was, but I think when you separated from a business partner, is that correct?
Yes.
And then you're out on your own doing this and you actually shared your pretty bold revenue goals.
Yes.
And I knew that you would get there. I knew because the consistency, the focus.
Yeah.
Right?
It was a crazy time. In the book, 2 Weeks Notice, I talk about getting into a partnership based on my lack of confidence and fear, and then wanting to get out of it and almost losing my entire company because I gave 50% to someone I hardly knew because I was afraid I couldn't do it on my own. And I thought I needed a man, to be quite honest. That's where it came from. And so in the year we split, we had hit the $5 million mark. And when it became my own business, within 18 months, we had hit the $16.5 million mark. It just exploded. And I think it's a great example of getting clear about what you want, who you are, and finding your voice. You'd be amazed what can happen. And there's some people listening right now that I call it your self-doubt shield. Something is keeping you safe. And I'm using air quotes for those who can't see me, safe, which really it's keeping you stuck. So the question to ask yourself is, what do I feel is very safe for me that's actually keeping me stuck? For example, the 9-to-5 job you do not want to be in is likely keeping you safe. Paycheck every other week, health insurance, consistency. It's safe, but it's keeping you stuck from going after what you truly deserve and want. For some people love their job. I'm talking about those that know they want something different. Or this is going to be a little controversial, but I say this to my community who are mainly women, and I know your community too. Sometimes when your spouse makes good money, you are safe, but that means you can relate. I just got chills because I've never talked to anyone who has said that's me. So can we talk about this for a second?
Totally. 100%.
Sometimes when your spouse makes great money, you can stay safe, but that means that you don't have to go out and put yourself out there and go after what you want. And so it's really a shield that's not serving you. Have you experienced that?
Yes. I feel like my husband's success, I'm not blaming him. It's all me.
No, so
is what's
proud of
holding me
him.
back.
Yeah.
Because I know that I'm destined for so much more. But there's no forcing function for me to actually go and do the thing because the cushy fallback is safe and amazing, by the way. Totally amazing.
It's wonderful. We're so very fortunate for it. Yeah.
Oh, 100%. And he's even said it. Well, you don't have to work. And even the thought, like, I didn't like that idea because I have a why behind what it is that I want to do. I can't do that by being the supportive wife, stay-at-home mom. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just not me.
Yes.
And so this is why I do what I do. I'm growing this show. I do PR for incredible entrepreneurs because I love it. It just makes me so excited. And the money is a huge bonus, of course, but I love paying for my own stuff, for my own car, for my own clothes, I just love it.
I love it
the freedom
so much. I have a really good girlfriend. Her company's called Powerhouse Women, and she has swag. And the back of the jacket says, "Thou shalt make her own money." Yeah. And I love that. Whether you need to or not, there's power in that. There's confidence in that. And I think it serves us well when we do. So I appreciate you sharing that because you have this beautiful life, whether you had a business or not, you do, but that doesn't mean that's enough. And you deserve to go after what you want. I love that you shared that.
Totally. And I also have kept my last name and my own bank account.
Oh my goodness. It gets even better.
Yeah, that's what I wanted. I mean, for me to go to a Martell is not that hard, like not a big escape from Warren.
Right.
But the cuteness that has evolved in when we're both invited to an event, they now call us the Wartels. Great.
It.
Perfect.
Oh, perfect. Done.
Yeah. So I love this thing about freedom. So after we're finished recording, I actually have to go on and record a 2-minute video about what my definition of wealth is.
Oh.
And the first thing that comes to mind is freedom.
Same.
But freedom of mind, freedom of spirit, freedom of time, and not being locked into something that we don't want to do. And here's the thing about running a business. Yes, you got to do the things in a day-to-day basis you don't want to do, but most of the time you can outsource for that stuff to people who love it. They love spreadsheets.
That's a great point. When I talk about learning to love what it takes to get what you want, there's a side step to that where when you start to make money, you can outsource the stuff that you don't really want to do. And I absolutely do that as well.
So I'm curious, what are the things you love to do in your business?
Ooh, that's a great question. So the things that I love to do, I love to create content. So whether it be content for the podcast, for my digital courses, for getting on stage, that's just to my core what I'm best at. When I worked for Tony Robbins, I was the director of content development. I learned how to create content from a master. And so I've always taken that with me into my own business. So content creation would be probably my number one. And then also we talk a lot about me being front stage. So right now in my business, I'd like to change this over time so as I'm getting older, I'm not going to be the only one that can do this. But right now in my business, I'm the only one who can sell our products with a webinar. It is me. It is my story. It is my connection with my audience. So I thrive in webinars, live webinars on camera. Now, if you told this girl 15 years ago that she'd be telling you today, I thrive on being live on video doing webinars, she would have laughed. Like, that is not who I started out as. So those listening, I want you to hear that you can evolve into being really good at things that you are not good at in the beginning of your business. And so when Facebook Live came out many years ago, I remember praying that day, please let it fail. Please let it fail. I do not want to have to get on video. I don't want Facebook Live to work. And then of course it blew up and we're on video every day. So that's one thing, doing webinars, being live on video, front stage, on my podcast, creating content. That's where I spend the bulk of my time. Like today, I've got 3 podcasts, whether it be for mine or for somebody else's. And then also high level vision and strategy is something I'm really involved in. I've got a team of 22 full-time people around the US. So they do a lot of work, to a lot of implementation, but it starts with my vision and strategy. And I'm getting better at really honing that in. So those are the
and then
I spend my time with.
You're so good at it too. And then in one of your latest episodes, you talk about hiring a CEO. Mm-hmm. Was that a new role?
Very new. So it's 1 year in. And so funny enough, my director of content in my company, she came from Tony Robbins. She worked in my role after me. And then I didn't steal her, for the record. She went to work for another business. Then I stole her. And so she came to work with me about 4 years ago and did an incredible job. But she had a really good sense of the business. Even though it wasn't her job to understand the numbers and the overall picture and vision, she always just got it. So one day, jokingly, she said, one day I'm going to be your CEO. And I looked at her and I said, that's the best idea you ever had. And so it took about a year for us to figure out how that's going to look. But last year, right after my book came out, she became my CEO. No coincidence that we had our best year ever with her in that role, because she's incredible. But it's something that I didn't know I would ever be able to do, because here's what I want other people to hear. You might just be starting out in your business, getting things going, but there's going to be a time that you're not going to want to do all of it and be responsible for everything. So in order for me to give her some responsibility, scariest thing I've ever done, giving up control. I think most of us entrepreneurs like to control most of everything, but I trust her, and I've been able to give that to her, and she does so much better than I do. So it's an evolution of the business. I feel like we've taken things to a whole new level, but I was 15 years in before I did that.
Wow. Okay. And the question I had for you too, how long have you had DCA?
So DCA, and in what you know it as today was 2019. I kind of think maybe if you got in January or October of 2019, do you remember?
I don't know. Maybe October. I feel like it wasn't your first time around.
Okay. So the first time out was January 2019. But here's something interesting. Years ago, I had a product called Courses That Convert. So how to create a course. And I also had a whole other program called Webinars That Convert, which is how to launch something. And so someone would create a course with Courses That Convert, and they'd be like, this is great, but I have no idea how to market it. And I'd have to say, oh, you need to buy my other program, which didn't feel good. And then if you got Webinars That Convert, oh, I can do a webinar, I can launch, but I have nothing to launch. Oh, you got to buy my other program. So when that went back and forth and just didn't feel good to me, that's when we decided, you know what, after I got out of that partnership, let's change things up. Let's bring those two courses together as one. And the reason I tell you this is it was scary and I didn't know if it would work, but I needed to take a risk. And I think that, the level of your willingness to take a risk is directly correlated with the success that you can see in your business. So I just took this risk and boom, it literally changed my entire business. It is the backbone of our business and the biggest revenue driver. So yeah, in 2019.
Okay, I was one of the OGs.
You were. I loved when you said that. I was like, oh, dang, I love that.
Yeah. And I remember the moment I signed up, I was actually pouring myself a hot bath. And I had like the tray that goes across the bath and my laptop.
I was
like, I'm
your
going to do this.
Style.
I know, right?
So
I don't do that anymore. So confusing. Okay, now, so this was last year. So 2023 was your best year yet.
Yes.
You grew. I'm sure the book had a lot to do with this as well.
Absolutely. The book kind of exploded things for sure.
So what is one lesson that you took away from last year that you wish you would have known sooner?
Ooh. Okay, this is a really personal one, but it's something that it would have served me well if someone would have helped me when I started. And that is that not all relationships in business are friendships. And I got really confused around, I have a big heart. I care deeply.
You so do.
And
I can just see you thinking everyone's your friend.
Everyone's my friend.
Everyone's your friend.
Yeah. Well, I didn't understand any different. And I'm very sensitive, which sometimes could really not serve me in business. So I need to be careful of it. But what happened was when you write a book, you have to ask for 1 million favors. I didn't realize that. That was the one thing I didn't like about a book launch. Will you promote my book? Will you have me on your podcast? Can I go on your show? Favor after favor after favor. And some people that I thought were really good friends did not support my book. Now, it could have been because it wasn't a good fit for their platform. It could have been a bad time because they were promoting something. It could have been that it was a direct competition to something else that they were doing. But in my mind, I thought they just don't like me. I thought they were my friend and they don't love me the way I love them. Or I did this for them. Why didn't they do that for me? I also don't want to be that kind of person that I'm keeping score of everything. So writing a book and asking for all those favors was some of the best therapy I ever needed personally, of realizing, wait a second, sometimes business is just business and that's okay. And also it's allowed me to make better business decisions this year. Things have come my way that I'm just like, I should say yes, because my people pleaser tendencies come out very quickly and this would be nice for them. And I'm thinking, this is a terrible idea for my business. My audience is going to be very confused by this messaging. And I've said no, knowing this is a business decision. And so kind of separating those just a little has allowed me to grow as a person and an entrepreneur, but also get a little bit thicker skin and get a little bit more in reality. Not everyone's my best friend.
No, but I could see that in you. When I first met you in real life, I sensed that too. And just and what I loved about you, which was just so fascinating, is I feel like you have an intuition about people as well.
I would like to think so. And I think that experience last year has allowed me to kind of step into that a little bit more. Like, Amy, you knew that, like you probably knew that was going to go that way, but you didn't want to be honest with yourself. Like your gut told you that. So that intuition, I really want to listen to it more. And
so did you ever have moments, especially with the book launch with sheer frustration and crying?
Yes. Yeah. I remember getting on the plane during my book launch. So the book came out in February. So it was probably January. I was getting on a plane to LA to do like 5 interviews for different things. And I was so upset about things not working out the way I thought they should that I cried all the way to the airport when my husband drove me. Got out of the car, kissed him crying. He's like, I feel really uncomfortable letting you get on this plane. I was like, oh, I'll be all right. It's fine. Getting on the plane, running into somebody at the airport, lying that it's just allergies. My eyes were so bloodshot. I just could not come to tell her the truth that I was just upset. And then getting on the plane and literally looking down so no one saw me crying. So yes, it was just an emotional thing. Whether it's a book launch, a course launch, a big promotion you're doing in your business, whatever, launching your podcast, it feels so big because we put so much into it. It's okay to treat your business like your baby, I think, because it shows I care deeply about what I'm creating in my team and my community. And sometimes that means heartache. But what I've learned over the years is feeling hurt isn't going to kill me. I'm allowed to feel all the emotions. I just don't necessarily want to live there. And so I have a therapist. I have a coach, like a life coach, and I have a business coach. I really invest in my mental health because I didn't for so long. And it was really hard to manage this business in my personal life and all of that. So over the last 3 years, protecting my mental health has been a major priority. Why I didn't do that 10 years ago, I don't know.
Well, good for you, by the way. Sometimes it's hard to take that step. There's so much stigma around getting coaches and therapists, but
truly,
Dan and I talk about this all the time. We have a whole roster of people that are on our team.
Yes, it's so valuable. And of course, as you make more money, you can reinvest in things like that. But even if someone's listening, they're like, I don't make enough money to have a coach and a therapist and a business coach. Fine. But you've got podcasts and books at your fingertips. And that is where I started. I fuel my brain every day with the right kind of messages because it could be a very dark, scary place if I don't. So there's things you can do even when you haven't made the kind of money you want to make just yet.
Yep. I remember going back to the crying moment with this podcast, because when I launched it, Dan was like, what's the purpose of it? And I said, I don't know. Amy said that I need to do this because blogging says I'm going to launch a podcast. And I did. And then trying to understand the monetization and the ROI. And it hit me one day when I got a message from a woman saying, hey, that episode helped me through this thing. And I go, that's it. That's it.
Yes.
So then I was on this adventure of growing the show. And then we got to episode 100 and then 200. And now we're like 252, made it to the top 1%. And it wasn't, 2 or 3 months ago when we discovered that Spotify had duplicated our show by accident. And something tells me it was from the very beginning, but we only just noticed it. So my producer and I, we kind of did some research and we thought, we'll just delete the one that has the lowest ratings. But it does have a long-term effect on the rating of your show. And I use a tool called Listen Notes because in PR, we look at other shows to pitch our clients to. And this gives you kind of like a global rank and a score of a show if you're in the top, 5%, 1%. And so we were at a listen score of like 42 and we were in the top 1.5% in the world. And we were staying there forever. And I was like, what do we got to do to make this better? Let's do 2 episodes a week. So then we started doing 2 episodes a week. Then we started to get bigger name guests on the show. I had Gabby Reese on a couple weeks ago.
That's a big deal. Yeah.
Somebody that I admired forever.
Love her.
And I was like, okay, let's do this. And I went and I checked listen score and my ratings had tanked.
Oh, no.
Tanked so bad that now I was at the same par as one of my friends who had 78 episodes and stopped recording shows 2 years ago.
Stop it. I'd be so frustrated.
I went into the bathroom crying. Dan's like, what's wrong? I'm like, my show. And then I turned to the sky and I said, okay, God, this is a test. God's like, do you really want to keep doing this podcast?
How bad do you want it?
Yeah. It's like, now is a perfect time for you to just throw in the towel. And I said, no, I'm going to keep going. And then 2 weeks ago, I hosted this mountaintop mastermind at this mountain here in Kelowna with some of my friends. And they wanted me to check their podcast score in Listen Notes for them because I have a subscription. So I plopped in their name and I just gave the information. And I was like, do I feel comfortable enough to check my score today? And I did. And it said my score, we were in the top 1%. And I was like, oh my God, ladies, we did it. And we were just writing prompts and ChatGPT and creating all these libraries. And I was like, I made it in the top 1%. So we're all celebrating.
Yes.
And those are the moments.
Those are the moments.
You put in the reps and you do the boring things over and over and over again. You know that at the end of it, something great is going to happen.
I agree. And that's such great. What's so important about that is one, you celebrated it. I think we don't allow ourselves to take a beat and celebrate what just happened. That's a very big deal, especially because you were there, then you lost it, then you came back. Now you know you're resilient. And so just more proof of your greatness. But the fact that you can celebrate with the other women, I think that's really special too.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Then they ask, what are you going to do to celebrate? And I don't know yet. I don't know. I feel like it's already happening. But it kind of goes back to what we're talking about in terms of putting in the reps, putting on the blinders. So one of the questions I wanted to ask for you earlier was, how do you And you kind of alluded to it already, but how do you say no to the shiny objects?
Ooh, yes. Okay. So I haven't always said no to the shiny objects. And so I know the difference now. I remember getting paid. I don't remember how much, but probably felt like a lot at the time, getting paid to fly somewhere and speak to this group. And I looked around and thought, not one person in this group is going to ever create a digital course. It's so off in alignment with what I do, but someone asked me to speak. And so I said yes. And so then I wasted all this time where I could have been building the business in the right way. And so for a long time, I said yes at a desperate energy. I think that's an important thing to be aware of and be honest with yourself when you have that desperate energy. A good indicator is like, I need it now. I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to ask anyone their opinion because I know they're going to say this is a bad idea. So I'm just going to keep it to myself. And then thinking that you're not enough or you're not good enough or you're not far enough. So you're just going to say yes to this thing or go after it relentlessly, even though it's probably not even the best thing for you. So I had to start paying attention to my desperate energy. And when it came up, I'd ask myself, what am I chasing? Usually it was money or ego. And I know those two things are not going to create happiness in the long run for me. And so I started to do what Marie Forleo, speaking of her, she taught me early on, was to get on the no train. She said, get on that no train and you say no more than you say yes. Now, in your first 2 years of business, I think you should get on the yes train. You don't know what you like, what you want, what you're good at. We got to experiment. But after those first 2 years, get on the no train where you stay very focused on what matters most. And then you say no to the things that you know in the long run are not going to serve you. Now, will you feel FOMO, fear of missing out? Absolutely. Will you feel like, but it would feel so good to my ego? Absolutely. But the smartest entrepreneurs say no more than they say yes. And when I heard that, Warren Buffett first said something along the lines of saying no is like the most powerful thing you can do to build a business. I believed that. And so it's allowed me to say yes to the things that really matter most.
Yeah. And then if you say, well, I get the first 2-year thing, but if you say yes too much, it just cannibalizes your time, your energy,
everything, right?
And then you do everything mediocre. You don't do one thing great.
That's another thing. You're spread too thin. And so you're kind of a jack of all trades, but known for nothing. And being known for something opens doors, creates opportunities, puts you in the right rooms. Your name comes up in the right conversations. So it's so much more valuable when you say no to most things and get really good at a few things.
Oh, and you know what? You also said in a podcast how you were on your book tour and then you're not going to be doing too many podcasts anymore. You're taking a break. And this was like, I had your phone number in my phone. It's like, do I ask her?
I'm so glad you did.
Go do it. Just ask her to be on your show. She'll just say no, and you can't take it personally.
I would have never said no. And I love that what you did, though. You had my phone number and you're like, you know what? I want this. I want to go after it. So often we're scared of, like you said, I've been there. Like, what if they reject me? What if they're like laugh at me or whatever, which of course, I'd never do, but it happens. And I've been laughed at, and I'm recently trying to get some big names on my show, and like, I'm getting no's left and right. And I just think, well, I have to shoot my shot and I have to go after it. And eventually something's going to turn into a yes. Mm-hmm. So I think building that muscle of being okay that someone says no to you is so important. I think you definitely have it. And I've learned it along the way for sure.
Oh, yeah. In PR, there's so many no's.
Totally, right?
All the time. And I'm like, it's not a no unless they say no. Yeah. And then if they do, it's just a suggestion.
It's just a suggestion. Yeah.
Just keep going.
We'll see. We'll change that over time.
Okay. So really quickly, let's chat about your book.
Okay.
2 weeks notice. Love it. It's good for people who want to leave their 9-to-5 and also people who already have a business. So tell us a little bit about the book and why you wrote it.
So I wrote this book, 2 weeks notice, find the courage to quit your job, make more money, live wherever, and change the world. And I wrote it because when I left my job, my very last corporate job, I had no idea how to build a business online. More so than just the mechanics and the strategies, my mindset was not in the right place. So every day I was so scared of everything. And I kept saying, I'm going to have to go back and grovel back for my job because this is never going to work. So I wrote the book that I wish I had 15 years ago when I first went out on my own. And the first part of the book is how to leave your job in a way that's full of integrity and you have a plan. The rest of the book is how to start a business from scratch. And so you're right. Even those who have kind of started their business but don't really know what they're doing, it could be really valuable. And those that are still in a 9-to-5 job or just in any situation you know you want to move away from, this book will give you that courage to move away and move into what you want. But yeah, I really wrote the book that I wish I had when I first left my job.
It's such a great primer. I see this as like the primer to some of Alex Hormozi's books.
I love that. I love Alex.
Good. Yeah. Okay. And then, so and in the book, by the way, too, there's a lot of great templates in the back of the book you can use, which I'll probably go into after this recording.
Great. I love that.
Okay. So one last question for you. Question I ask all women on the show. When I ask you what it means to be a wild woman, what is that to you?
Oh, I love this question. Well, I think it will be no surprise. To be a wild woman would be a woman who is free to make her own decisions, do what she wants, when she wants, how she wants it, unapologetically. And that's, I think, my journey right now in my 40s to just be unapologetically myself. I don't think I'm there yet, but I think I'm getting really close. And so to me, a wild woman doesn't apologize for anything.
Yeah. And I call it the give no F's 40s.
Amen. I'm so there. I'm so there.
I love it. Well, Amy, it has been so real having you on the show. Thank you, by the way, for encouraging me to start this podcast.
So glad you did, my friend.
And being one of the first guests that land in the top 1%.
Yes.
This is amazing.
I feel very honored. Thanks for having me.